time to explore some more exceptions to Mendel's genetics and his principles. And this time, a rule breaker is going to involve something you're familiar with, your blood type. And so we have learned so far about the idea that typically things are dominant and recessive, and incomplete and codominance breaks those rules. But the idea of multiple alleles takes us away from Mendel thinking that every trait only had two alleles, and actually there's possibilities that things can have multiple alleles, more than two. So one of the common examples that's used is blood types. So instead of there just being an A allele and a B allele, there's actually also an O allele. And these alleles are going to have instructions that are going to create a antigen on the surface of the cell. So you don't really need to know all of that detail, but there is a purpose of these traits, and it has to do with the cell membrane so that the blood recognizes that it belongs to that person and matches up with that person. So human blood types have these different versions. So they have an A, a B, or an O. And you still inherit two copies of an allele, but now there's just going to be more variety in the genotypes, and that leads to also there being a third phenotype. So this chart is something that you want to get familiar with. There's 4 blood types: type A, type B, type AB, and O. And this is the phenotype. So this is actually what's kind of being expressed in a person. Now the genotype, I've seen them written 2 ways. Some it's with this superscript idea, and others it's just using the capital letters. I prefer to use this column right here, which just kind of keeps it a little bit more simple, having 2 letters. So the A is going to actually produce blood type A. And if the A pairs with an O allele, the A is going to be dominant over the O. So A and B actually share dominance over O, which is known as the recessive. As we do a few more practice problems, you'll kind of see this pattern. And one of our objectives for today is to actually talk about why this matters. And it matters because you can only receive blood from specific people based on what blood type you have. So here's an image that shows what I was talking about, the cell membrane, how if you have blood type A, you have a specific antigen on your surface of your blood type. If you have blood type B, you have instructions to make a different antigen. If you have blood type AB, you actually have both. So this is that idea of codominance. They're both showing. But if you have blood type O, you don't have any antigens on your surface of your cell membrane. And this is recessive. So if this is present and there is an A allele present, it's going to get overshadowed. So again, just multiple allele means that there's more than 2 alleles that can control the trait. The common example that we often see is blood type. So I have a few crosses for you to put down in your notes and try. And these are Punnett squares. They're set up just like the Punnett squares that we've done so far. So you have a cross between an A, B, and an O person. You may want to use this chart to remember the genotype for a type O person is OO. This is a cross between an AO and a BO. And then if you would cross them with OO and OO, what would you get? I'm guessing some of you are getting so good now that you're probably you can see some of this, but I want you to put it down on paper. So pause the video and try to do those 3 Punnett squares. We're going to go over the answers to check yours. And if you're getting these correct, that's great. If you're not, you want to reach out to me and let me know, and we can try to problem solve what's going wrong. So here we have an A, B, and the O. 50% offspring chance of having type A, 50% chance of having type B. What's interesting is you could have offspring that have a blood type that isn't one of the blood types of the parents. And that's something that happens with multiple alleles. The second problem you tried was an AO and a BO. Now you have 25% chance for each blood type. And again, a chance of having offspring that don't have the same blood type as the parent. And then the last one, when you cross two individuals with type O blood, the only option for their children is to have type O blood. There are more of these available online if you'd like to try to practice more. And I offered you the opportunity to maybe use the slideshow that I'm presenting, because there are other sites that give you more information on blood types, and a lot of students find this an interesting topic. Before we wrap up these notes for the day, I want to also mention that even though sometimes there's more than one allele for a certain gene, sometimes there's multiple genes that control a trait. And this can get into Punnett squares that instead of having 4 squares, they could have 64 squares or 16 squares. So we're not going to do any that are that complicated, but traits like skin color, height, and eye color, you see such a variation, and that's because they're controlled by multiple genes. It's not as simple as one gene, like you have brown eyes or you have blue eyes, although you'll see some practice problems like that, but these are usually controlled by several genes. And this image here shows that you can have a variation. If this were skin color, very, very fair skinned, all the way to very, very dark skinned. Now, a student usually will ask, well, is that an albino? Well, albinos are an actual other trait that turns off skin pigmentation. So that's even another gene. So you can tell this can get more complicated. The other thing talking about the ability to turn off a gene, my favorite breed of dogs are Labrador Retrievers, and Labrador Retrievers' coat color is one of those that have a gene that can shut off other genes. So for example, if Labrador Retrievers have this gene and they have the recessive copies of each, and here I have its little e, it actually turns off whatever color the dog should have been. So then you can kind of see here that that's how you result in this in yellow labs. But black is actually dominant over brown, but the yellow lab color is a result of a gene shutting off those instructions. So here's kind of an overview of how you get different shades of Labrador Retrievers. Hope you found that information helpful, and you look into some of these more. If you have any questions, please make sure you email me.